We are good to go.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. We'll call the meeting to order. Thanks everyone for attending tonight. We have an abbreviated meeting of the Business Finance Subcommittee that'll be running tonight from 6 with a hard stop at 55 because we do have a full school committee, special meeting of the full school committee tonight at 7 o'clock. Rebecca informs me that we are streaming on Holden Cable and we are recording the meeting as well. So the agenda for tonight is really specific to many of members on this committee's request to understand in detail the feasibility analysis that the administration has done with regard to different reopening models and what the budgetary impact of each of those models would be, as well as what types of constraints would be felt and at what point they would be felt. So, for example, if we were looking at a hybrid model and we could not feasibly bring everybody back in a hybrid model, at what point could we, what populations could we start to bring back before we start to recognize or experience certain constraints that make it unfeasible? So with that, we received a report from Director Dede a few hours ago, a little more than a few hours ago, and I'll ask Dan to take us through and present his finding.
All right, thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone. As we looked at the three opening plans, or the possible three opening plans, we asked ourselves the questions. Number one, how can we safely receive students to and from school, and this pertains to transportation. Number two, how can we safely teach our students? This is relative to instruction. How can we feed our students? And then last but not least is how can we best protect our students and staff while they're in school, and this pertains to safety. And as you'll see up here on the screen, and as I said a moment ago, one common denominator, say that 10 times fast, in each question that we asked was safety. Safety in all four scenarios. So as the committee knows, there were three scenarios that we worked on in response to the request from the DESE: in person, the hybrid, and the full remote. What I'm going to do here.
Bye, guys. Thank you. As soon as I can, close to 10.
So I'd ask anyone who is on the call, if you're not speaking, if you could please put your phone on, or your microphone on mute. Looks like somebody is calling in. Also has her phone microphone not on mute.
I am on mute now.
Thank you.
We all set? We all set? All right. Okay. So I'll start first, Mike, by going through each option, and then I'm happy to answer any questions relative to each option. So beginning with number one, option one, in-person learning. As you know, we conducted a parent survey recently, and in that survey, 57% of the respondents said that they would attend school under this model, and another 26% remained undecided. Relative to this model, it was important that we look at social distancing, not 6 feet apart, but rather at least 3 feet apart. And the 6 feet would be relative to taking a mask break or eating. Number one, in terms of the first question that we asked ourselves, transportation. As you know, we transport approximately 6,700 students. Currently, we are using 49 buses 45 77 passenger buses, and 4 83 passenger buses across the board. With the recently released guidelines from the DESE, the total number of days for this academic year has been reduced from 180 days to 270 days, which basically frees up 10 days for the buses. Per the DESE guidelines relative to transportation, all buses need to be cleaned once a day, but we're stating that buses need to be cleaned between each run. Secondly, students, when they ride the bus, need to have a mask. And thirdly, there should also be hand sanitizer on the bus as the students enter the bus. So what does this mean in terms of the financial implications? By shortening the year to 170 days, we pick up approximately $271,000. However, given the DESE guidelines and in terms of the bus capacities, for example, our 77 buses, given the DESE guidelines, the most that we could have on the bus would be approximately 25 students. And then with that is a driver, and then the recommended, keyword recommended, option of a bus monitor. That being said, as Dr. McCall had pointed out in our recent meeting, we would need approximately 48 additional buses. And what I did here is that I looked at the 77 passenger capacity buses. We would need 48 additional buses in addition to the 49 that we already have. The additional 48 buses is going to cost us approximately $4 million. Per the DESE guidelines as well, the recommended bus monitor, we're looking at approximately $2.1 million. And that figure is a figure that I received from AA Transportation in looking at if they paid that person what that would cost. Additional cleaning costs, and these additional cleaning costs would be cleaning the buses after each route, after each tier in the morning, approximately $247,000. And then the additional PPE, the mask, the hand sanitizer, looking at approximately $75,000. So in terms of the first scenario, in terms of transportation, we'd be looking at with a nominal savings of $271,000. We're looking at potential shortfall there, approximately $6.2 million. And again, due in large part to the fact that we're looking to add 48 additional buses in addition to 97 bus monitors. Secondly, in terms of instruction, we would look to keep students socially distanced a minimum of 3 feet. We also looked at, to accommodate this, we also looked at portable classrooms. And we were estimating that we would need potentially between 16 and 20 portable classrooms. So for the purpose of this exercise here, we used 18 portable classrooms that we would use across the board. Again, going back to the survey, 17% of families who responded said that they would choose the remote-only option relative to instruction here. So what would the cost be here? Number one, to lease, if you will, 18 portable classrooms across the district at an estimated cost of $48,000 per month. We're looking at approximately $8.6 million. $8.6 million. Secondly, we would need to purchase additional Chromebooks and mobile hotspots. Thirdly, with that would be additional software and applications at approximately $221,000. To offset these costs, there are two federal grants that we have applied for and have received. And most recently, just this past weekend, we received notification on the Remote Technology Essentials Grant at approximately $146,000. That would be the district's share of that grant. And then secondly, the ESSER grant, approximately $89,000 to offset those costs. But still, again, here we're looking at approximately $8.7 million. Number three, in terms of feeding our students, and this is probably going to be one of the biggest challenges that we would have to deal with. And in looking at this and looking at the impact that it would have on food service, we estimated that we would need to extend the workday for each cafeteria worker across the board by 1 hour, across the board. Secondly, there would be the grab and go lunches. Again, the grab and go meals, and we implemented this this past spring at the high school. We did it, as you may recall, on Tuesdays. Thirdly, we're looking at additional waste containers, and again, we're estimating that would be between 5 to 12 per building. We would have to engage our provider in terms of the waste pickup, and we're estimating again that there'd be a 40% increase in waste in trash pickup. And with all this as well, we're looking at we're estimating that this would require an additional 15 custodians. So what is the financial impact? Number one, in terms of increasing the 1 hour for all cafeteria workers at 170 days across the board, we're looking at approximately $130,000. For the grab and go packaging, we're looking at $100,000 to purchase approximately 100 additional waste containers, 14,500. To increase the frequency of our waste pickup provider. And again, this is per the existing contract. We're looking at just under $263,000 at $262,650. We would have to purchase additional student desks, and there is a cost there of approximately $270,000. And then with the additional custodians, we're looking at approximately $810,000. And with each custodian, we factored in both salary and benefits. So that figure there is both salary and benefits. The impact there is just under 1.6 at $1,587,150. And then last, in terms of safety, the fourth question that we asked ourselves, and to do this exercise, again, we looked at the Excel document that was provided to all districts across the Commonwealth when calculating this information, again, using 170 days.
Excuse me for interrupting. Would you mind scrolling through your document as you're covering the different areas? I think right now we're seeing the narrative on meals. Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Sorry about that. Appreciate that. So in terms of safety, again, all offices across the district would require additional protective shielding. All offices, all buildings would require the appropriate signage. We're also estimating that we would need to hire 5 additional nurses to ensure that there's adequate coverage across the district. We would be looking to purchase additional hand sanitizer and hand sanitizing stations across the district. All bubblers would need to have cup dispensers installed, and bottled water, if necessary, would have to be provided. Bathrooms would have to have barriers installed between sinks and toilets and urinals that are closer than 3 feet. And one of the other bigger challenges is our HVAC and air handler systems, and those would have to be brought up to par as well. All said and done, to look through to review these numbers, PPE $2.1 million. Shielding and signage, just under $5,000. 5 additional nurses. And again, similar to the custodians, we're looking at both salary and benefits. We're looking at approximately $475,000. The hand sanitizer and the bubble cups, we're looking at approximately $1.1 million. The bathroom upgrades that I spoke about a moment ago, where there are urinals and sinks that are less than 3 feet apart, approximately $175,000, $174,670. The HVAC issues, to address the issues across the district, we're looking at approximately $125,000 to get a provider in here and to address the districts across the board. The additional waste containers, just under $4,400 at $4,350. Again, we do have the ESSER grant, and that would be an offset to these costs. So in terms of safety, we're looking at just under $4 million at $3.9 million. When you review the figures in each category that I spoke about earlier, going to the beginning of this overview, transportation, instruction, meals, and safety, we're estimating that given what we know now today at this time, that for the in-person model, we're looking at $20,470,582. It is our opinion, it is our recommendation that the option of full in-person learning is not feasible for the district at this time, given current DESE guidelines and our current budget situation. So, Mike, before I proceed, and I'm happy to proceed, again, just knowing the time constraints that we have, I'm happy to jump into the second option if you'd like, or I can take.
Yeah, I think you provided a lot of the basis, which probably carries forward. So my hope is that we can go a little quicker as we go through option 2 and option 3. So why don't you go ahead and take us through that, and then we'll do questions after.
Sure thing. So the second option, again, is the hybrid model, and again, just want to go back to the recent survey that was conducted, and 71% of the respondents stated that they would participate in some type of a hybrid model, with 17% stating that at the time of the survey that they were undecided. And what is the hybrid model? The hybrid model is in essence 2 cohorts. And with the hybrid model, one cohort would be in the buildings on Monday and Tuesdays, and then the second cohort would be in Thursdays and Fridays, and Wednesdays would be the one day dedicated to remote learning for all students. Again, just looking at each category with transportation. With this particular model, the hybrid, we would be looking at between 2 to 6 additional buses. For the purpose of the exercise, we estimated 4 buses that we would need. And again, 170 days of instruction and picking up 10 less days to run the buses. As I said a moment ago, all the buses would need to be cleaned in between runs. There would need to be sanitizing stations in all the buses, and potentially a monitor as well in all the buses and student mask. So what are the financial implications here? Adding the 4 additional buses, and again, for the purpose of this exercise, I looked at adding 4 77 passenger buses. And again, given the DESE guidelines, the capacity on such a bus would be approximately 25 students. We'd be looking to add 52 bus monitors, and the cost associated with that is $85,680. Again, as I stated above, we'd have a savings above of from going from 180 to 170 days. of $271,366. But we'd also pick up an additional savings by going 4 days a week of just under $738,000. But then when you have to factor in the additional cleaning cost for the buses at $247,350, and the additional cost for PPE materials. In terms of transportation, we'd be looking, in terms of this scenario here, we'd be to the good, approximately $281,731. Instruction, again, looking at the survey, 71% to 88% of students of those surveyed would participate in the hybrid model, and anywhere from 12 to 29% would choose remote. And as I stated a moment ago, in addition to the smaller classrooms, we would be able to support the cohort of students we would not, get it straight, Dan, we would not be able to support the cohort of students at 3 feet socially distanced. So to address this challenge, we would have to make adjustments in the buildings. For elementary and middle grades, this would require using art rooms, music rooms, libraries, gymnasiums, and cafeterias. And at the high school, this would require using the gymnasium, performance rooms, and libraries, and additional spaces for classroom space. We would need to either purchase or create dividers for multiple classrooms in some of the larger areas. We would also need to, as I stated above, we would need to look at purchasing additional Chromebooks and mobile hotspots. And again, to offset some of these costs, we had the Remote Technology Essentials Grant in the ESSER or the CARES Act grant. So what are the numbers? So to create additional classroom spaces, we're looking at approximately $16,000. For Chromebooks and mobile hotspots, we'll be looking at making a purchase of approximately $390,000, almost $391,000. Software and additional apps, we're looking at approximately $221,436. As I said a moment ago, we would have the Remote Technology Essentials Grant, which would offset these costs, approximately $146,000, and then the ESSER or the CARES grant offsetting these costs at $89,000. But given this scenario here, we'd be looking at a shortfall there of just under $400,000 at $392,993. Again, meals. Again, this would be a challenge. It is our estimation that there would be at least one more lunch tier at the high school, in addition to using additional space for lunch at the high school. As I stated earlier, we would have to continue with the grab and go. There would be additional cost for waste that was created. Again, in this scenario, we'd be looking at anywhere between 3 and 6 additional waste containers per building. And we estimate here that the waste would increase by approximately 25%. Folding cafeteria tables that currently exist would not be suitable for this model to maintain the social distancing that is required. So we'd have to store those tables, and we'd have to use classroom desks or tables and chairs in terms of this model here. So if we were to increase by 1 additional hour just the high school staff, the high school cafeteria staff, annualized, we're looking at approximately $226,000. The grab and go packaging, $50,000. The additional waste containers, and again, approximately 50 or so, just under $7,300. The increase in the frequency of the waste disposal, approximately $146,000, $145,920. In additional custodians, we'd be looking at here, and again, this figure here of these 2 additional custodians, this is both salary and benefits of $108,000. Under this scenario, the total here is approximately $537,211. And then lastly, would be student safety, student and staff safety. And as I said a moment ago, offices would require protective shielding across the board, as well as the appropriate signage. Each school would require hand sanitizing stations to be installed in every classroom, in the cafeteria, at each entry point. All bubblers would need to have the cup dispensers installed, and our bottled water would need to be provided. Bathrooms would need to have barriers installed where the sinks, the toilets, and the urinals are closer than 3 feet. And as I said a moment ago, again, we would need to address the HVAC and the air handler issues across several of our buildings. So what's the impact here? For PPE materials, just over $1 million. For the additional shielding and signage, just under $5,000. The additional nurse, again, $95,000, and this figure here, again, is salary and benefits. The hand sanitizer and the bubble cups, just under $570,000. The bathroom upgrades, approximately $174,000. The HVAC issues, again, approximately $125,000. Purchasing additional waste containers, just under $4,400. And these costs would be offset again with the SRO, the CARES grant, at $87,658. So the total here, the financial implications here, is just under $2 million, at approximately $1.9 million. The grand total for the hybrid model, looking at each area, would be approximately $2.6 million after the offsets. It is our recommendation that without having a full understanding of the FY21 budget, specifically the state budget, we're not in a situation at this point in time to support this model as it currently is presented. The hybrid model is, at this point in time, cost prohibitive, again, given our budget constraints. The third model, I'll get it straight. Option 3 is remote learning. And this model assumes that the district will start the year fully remote. And looking at this here, we used a 50% factor for calculating our estimates below. Number one, transportation. Again, we're assuming that we could use the existing fleet, but that we would realize a savings there. And I'm just going to jump down to the figures here. Again,
can I quick question on transportation?
Sure.
Hey Ben, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ben. Let's okay. Have them get through. I'd like to get through the rest of the presentation, and then we'll open on the floor for questions.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So using this model here, and again using our buses for half the year, we're looking at a savings of approximately $2 million. There would be a cost incurred for the additional cleaning at just under $124,000, $123,675. And again, the additional cost of the PPE supplies. With this scenario here, where we're looking at a potential savings of approximately $1.9 million. Number two, in terms of instruction, though we would be remote, we would still need to upgrade technology, specifically in terms of additional Chromebooks and in terms of the mobile hotspots. And as I've stated, we have the Remote Technology Essentials Grant and the ESSER are the CARES grant to address those needs. We're estimating here for the Chromebooks and the mobile hotspots that we're looking just under $400,000, $390,800. Again, to purchase additional software and apps, we're looking at $221,436. Again, these costs would be offset with the Technology Essentials grants, approximately $146,003, and the ESSER or the CARES grant at $89,240. Even with these offsets, we're looking at a shortfall here, approximately $377,000. Under meals, again, we would be looking at the grab and go model across the board. We'd be looking at the additional packaging of approximately $25,000. And then finally, in terms of safety, again, we used the DESI document to calculate these costs at 50% of the school year. And again, I need to state that this is just to estimate to the best of our abilities, and this does not reflect the actual plan, at least as of this writing, as of this date. We would estimate using one quarter of the hand sanitizing cost, as opposed to having all students in the buildings. To safely open the schools, all costs, again, as I stated above, would require protective shielding as well as proper signage. The bubblers would have to have the cup dispensers installed. The bottled water would need to be available. The bathrooms would need to have the barriers installed, again, where sinks, toilets, and urinals are closer than 3 feet. And in each sink would have to have a soap and a paper towel dispenser. And as I stated also above, the HVAC and the air handler issues would have to be addressed across the board. So what are you looking at in terms of cost here? The PPE, $527,180. The shielding and signage, just under $5,000. The hand sanitizer, the bubble cups, $284,835. Again, the bathroom upgrades, approximately $174,670. The HVAC issues, to address those across the district, $125,000. The metal covered waste containers, just under $4,400. And again, we would have the ESSER grant for as an offset here. So in this scenario here, under safety, we're looking at a shortfall there, approximately $1 million. But when you take the total for the remote model, we're looking at potentially being to the good $491,000 in change. As of this writing, in this moment in time, the remote model makes the most sense for the district, and most importantly, it is the model that we believe, administration believes is the safest. And I come back to my opening comments when I reviewed the 4 questions that we asked ourselves, and the common denominator in each question was safety. We believe that this model, the remote model, is the safest alternative for our students, our families, and our staff.
Thank you, Dan. So just a quick perspective, I've got 6:35. We're going to plan to adjourn at 6:55. We'll continue to look for hands in the chat. But let's be cognizant of time. I really would like for every member to at least get one round of questions. So please be mindful of that. Ben, I'm going to take your comment before as a raised hand. So why don't you go ahead, and then I have Malia and Ken.
Okay, thank you. Dan, I want to thank you for the work that you guys put in. I think this makes a lot of sense with your recommendation, the numbers. The one question I have, and I don't know if it's because we've been talking about it so much or it's near and dear to my heart, but the question I have is the savings on the transportation. If I look at our budget for transportation, it's closer to $7 million. If you look at your budget, and so it would just be right now we're saying that if we only did half a year, we would see a savings of $2 million. So I guess the question is there's another $1.5 million if I would literally just take our planned budget for transportation and cut it in half.
So Ben, the focus of the savings here was primarily on home to school. The 7 million that you referred to is both home to school and SPED. So when we were looking at our numbers here and calculating our estimates, we only focused on the home to school piece there.
Okay, I'll leave it at that for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, we got Malia.
Yep, I have two questions about things that I don't see here, so I'm curious if they're reflected in some way.
Sure.
The first is in particularly the remote, since that's where you seem to have landed. Is the cost of things like the remote learning platform that we've talked about possibly getting from the state or tapping into through the state, is that reflected in that apps and software line, or is that additional charges for instruction that are not included in this budget because we're not planning on doing that?
So I'm gonna, Bob, are you there, Bobby?
Yes,
Because I know that's been mentioned a number of times, and we got some guidance about that from DESE in the past 24 hours, which makes it hard to integrate into this. So I was curious if that was included.
Malia, that was not included. So any potential expense for buying into the DESE's platform is not included in this. When we were pulling this together, that was still way too loose for us to throw dollar amounts at. So
Okay.
at this point in time, this does not include it. We wanted to include things that we're sure we're moving forward with here. We didn't want to give you guys anything where you're like, well, you thought you were doing this and now you're not.
So this is fixed expenses you can generally calculate. It doesn't include things like that or extra professional development you might have to do around remote learning or anything really related to beefing up our remote learning as well. So, okay.
Malia, it doesn't include PD, but this doesn't also include some other grants, such as federal grants, and we use a lot of that money to pay for our PD. So this is just things we're confident of as of today, which we don't have some of these grants in the door.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I appreciate that. I wish there was sort of some umbrella cost estimate for some of that, because those are things that are relevant to how we plan to offer this, but that's okay. My second question is, in lieu of time, this might wait till later, but I will put the question out there, that there is mention of in all of our plans and in even this, that we would possibly include special education students in the classrooms, even if we're all remote, or we would try to. And I haven't seen anything that addresses those costs and how that might be managed. I mean, there would be transportation related to that. There would be staffing. There's a lot of costs connected with that. And I'm not sure how that's reflected in the remote model. So I wanted to clarify.
Yeah, and I'm happy to speak on that if you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Malia, in terms of staffing, the staffing are included in every phase of this plan that would make that work. So, for instance, in the very first one, if we're going to get students to be in and receive services face-to-face, and the staff are there. In the hybrid plan, if students are going to be in for both cohorts, the first cohort and the second one, the staff are already there, already employed. So there wouldn't be any additional staffing costs. Also, when Dan and I worked on this, we did not reduce some of the busing costs for a particular reason, just as you noted, we want to make sure we can get the kids and scoop them up and bring them in. So even on the last plan, which is starting remote and then working towards getting kids in, we've included costs of the buses to do that. So we feel we've included those costs. Those wouldn't be extra to this.
Okay. I appreciate it. Those were my two initial questions. I'll have more later, but thank you.
Sure.
Great, thank you. So I have Ken.
All right, thanks. I just have three quick things budget related. I'll have other things later tonight. I don't know if they need answers immediately. One, when we think about our special education students, I think we should be at least considering and making space for the fact that if parents don't feel that their students' special needs are being met, that we're going to see an increase in out-of-district costs. And I just think we need to be cognizant of building in some buffer for that. Secondly, there's a lot of building adjustments here. I know Holden had voted money at town meeting for doing HVAC to the schools. I don't know if any of these HVAC improvements could be passed along to the towns. And third, in terms of, I don't want this to happen, but if we are remote, I think that at some point the impact of having employees who don't have responsibilities is going to have to be on the table. And, how we're going to deal with, any potential cost implications of furloughs or layoffs, depending on what model we go to.
So Ken, I'll be happy to speak to those, and I'll start with the last one first. And we acknowledge this does not reflect any of that activity. That's obviously that's a separate discussion, and certainly a discussion for this group, and then the larger school committee. So we acknowledge that that's something that has to be looked at. Secondly, in terms of the HVAC work, again, anything that's $35,000 or more would be the responsibility of the town. And again, we're somewhat pressed for time, if you will, to address some of these issues as quickly as we can to get the buildings open and the staff in there. So that's one of the issues there with that. But certainly looking at the threshold there, and then in terms of the buffer on the out-of-district cost, as we wrapped up FY20, again, and we were cleaning up various areas. I was very cognizant of special education cost, and as I think I had reported to this committee, a week or two ago, whatever last we met, at that time we were looking at a carry forward of $1 million or thereabouts. Unofficially, keyword is unofficially. Again, we haven't closed yet, but we are looking at a carry forward of about 1.2 in circuit breaker, and I think that would certainly help the district to address any of those unanticipated out of district costs. And I think that would serve as a decent buffer, regardless of, it is a decent buffer in the event that FY21 circuit breaker comes in lower, as we anticipate it is going to come in lower.
Thank you. Megan, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, guys. So my question is more of a clarification on the food service cost for remote learning. I'm curious, does that cost mean that all students will be fed or have the option to be fed a grab-and-go lunch? I didn't know what DESI's particular ruling on that is, since last spring those were not school days, but these are school days. So does the district have to, or should they be offering lunch to every student in the district?
So we would be looking to offer a meal to all students across the district, and we'd be looking at setting up sites in 4, if not all 5 towns at a specific building.
Great.
Did I miss anything there, Bob?
Megan, the only thing I would say that in terms of your question, we would be looking to feed the students that were in the building. So if we're looking at the remote plan, we would be bringing in small numbers of kids initially and growing it up. So that's why the cost maybe for the packaging is so much lower here. We're not anticipating that we would have all of the students in school for the second half of the year. We'd be starting up the hybrid model slowly with targeted students that are most vulnerable, and then working up from there. So that's why the costs seemed lower.
So just to clarify again, so you would not be offering lunch to students who are at home, except for those who are home.
We absolutely would. In all three of these plans, we're offering lunch for students, and the cost for those would be included. And we looked at what we had for attendance last spring, and we ramped it up by a factor because we thought going to the individual towns would be able to pull a few more people, and also we believe more people will want it this year based on where they are financially themselves.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. I have a couple of questions. So at our last meeting, we spoke, and I think, Dan, you and Daryl presented to our committee that there was a PPE grant opportunity for funding that approximated $1.6 million, but I don't see that reflected in either of these models. So can you give us an update on that grant funding and why we might not be seeing that here?
Sure thing. That's correct. It's not there. Bob is still working on that grant. The value of that grant is approximately 1.6 million. But what we did when presenting these costs to you is that we showed you in terms of the grants that had been awarded and had been received by the district. We are still in the process of writing that grant, so we didn't factor that into this equation here.
But this grant is in the legislature, is that correct? And our prediction of 1.6 million is based on information that was given to us. Is there any reason for us to expect that we might not receive on this grant?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I don't believe so, Mike. And again, for the larger group, the 1.6 is driven by $225 per student per foundation budget, and that gets us to the 1.6. I don't see where we wouldn't receive the full amount. That is the allocation for Wachusett. But again, in working on these projections, we made the decision to use those grant dollars that have been approved and received by the district.
Okay.
And Mike, just add here to maybe qualify this a little bit more. We know what we're getting for that grant. However, the way it's worded, they will let us know which of our offsets they're going to approve for us to be able to apply against it. So we didn't want to say, oh, we could apply, here's this, and we'll lower transportation by this, we'll lower these costs. We want to be more sure of what actually are they going to allow to be offset against that. So it's not just, here's your money. We have to then submit to them what our plan is, what we would say are COVID-related costs, and they'll let us know which of those are approved for that offset. So that's another reason we didn't want to just throw that in here.
Yeah. Okay. So, assuming, and certainly you've laid out models in both option 1 and option 2 that show well above $1.6 million in COVID-related costs, I think probably well above even PPE-related costs. But going on with that, you mentioned we do have a $1.2 million carry forward unofficially, right? We haven't closed the books yet. And
Correct.
we also know that we have about $1 million plus in at some point that we need to resolve with respect to budget dollars that were budgeted for transportation that was unused. So, there is some dollars that the district has access to. It seems to me as we're looking forward to next year. It's interesting to me that those numbers, 3.8 million, I think give some buffer over the 2.5 that you listed in the hybrid model. But I guess, what I'm interested in learning is if the district feels, or the administration feels, that it's cost prohibitive at this point to offer hybrid for everyone. Have you gone through the exercise of determining what populations of students we can bring back and what the incremental costs of those populations would be? So, for example, if the district decides that our highest priority, which I happen to believe is to bring back those first for whom learning loss is greatest, what would be the cost associated with bringing them back in? Then what would be the cost of bringing back, say, K through 2 in a hybrid model? Have we done the analysis to determine what those incremental costs are for that, understanding what is possible if the 2.5 full hybrid is not possible at this point?
Sure. And Mike, if I could just go back for a second, and just to just speak to the transportation matter just for a second. Again, there's 1.4 that's encumbered and it's sitting there, and either will fall to the bottom line and go into E&D or what have you. I just would like you to know and the committee to know that I did receive a counter proposal again from Mr. Ernenwein at AA Transportation, and I will bring that forward at our next committee meeting to share with the larger groups. I just wanted to make you aware of that. Secondly, we haven't looked at yet the incremental cost in terms of bringing back each group into the buildings. Happy to look at that further.
Mike, I would say our biggest challenge with doing that is to set a date on when we're going to bring them back. So we tried to do what you said in this third option, because this third option is starting the year remote and finishing the year in hybrid. The biggest challenge we have is setting a physical date of when is this going to happen, because we feel that's something that we got to get a little further down the pike before we can say that we're ready to move forward with the schools. And as I worked with all of the principals, it wasn't money that was the biggest challenge here. It was that we physically can't be ready to bring kids in the hybrid model starting September 16th. There was too much to do. So that's another reason that we probably would not be looking towards that, at least initially in the year.
Yeah, so I certainly appreciate that there's more than just the question on feasibility, but I guess I'm asking my question related to feasibility. And so before we can even talk about a timeline, you kind of need to know, is it feasible? So I guess I'm just trying to understand what is possible. If we're saying that bringing everyone back full on because it's a $2.5 million hit, even though I think that we seem to have some levers in place that might be able to cover that, is not, then what would be feasible?
I think what we put forward in this third option is feasible, Mike, and that's to start the year remote, finish the work we need to do, and then start to bring the kids in. And it could be the second half of the year. It might be sooner than that. It might be the end of November. It might be the beginning of November. We can't tell you that today until we finish this work so we're ready to bring kids into school. There's quite a bit involved here. It's not simply about transportation. It's one of the biggest challenges we have is physically within the walls of the building. And that's where that's what we're throwing our time at right now and our energy.
Okay. Let me go to Carl, who hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet, and then Malia. We have about 2 minutes left, so let's see if we can get this wrapped up.
All right, thank you. And then I think this would build off of what Mike was just saying, in that I think what would be, and especially with the the recommendation being for remote at least, but being able to lay out, like, not arc over the year, but for example, month by, per month, for a monthly snapshot, what would the delta be? What would the change be if we were to bump up to going hybrid? Because I understand that there's some sunk costs that are associated with some of these things, but I think that would certainly at least be helpful to inform all of us in terms of, because if we recognize that the remote model on there isn't, we're really not hoping to be doing that throughout the year, and 50% was kind of a rough, gives you kind of a rough order of magnitude. But like if we could take it like on an average month, jumping to hybrid will cost us this much more for that month. That, again, like I said, that might be helpful to kind of visualize what these transitions between different states could look like.
Okay. I've got 6:55. I will, at this point, entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Rebecca, do you mind calling the,
Okie doke. Hold on. Dennis,
Dennis, yes?
Mills,
Mills, yes.
Gustafson,
Gustafson, yes.
Mitchell,
Mitchell, yes.
Otmar.
Otmar, yes.
Okay, you're all set.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in 5
Thank
minutes.
you.